and certainly we have to find a solution for the loss and damage fund. We are ready to make a deal, and as I said, we need to look at the world as it is nowadays, and what we refuse to accept, we will accept a lot, but what we refuse to accept is that the biggest emitters puts itself in shoes of Ethiopia or other developing countries. That's not true, that's not fair. They are part of the disaster, and so they have to be part of the solution. That's the requirement we have, and of course we want to help those who are most affected, the most vulnerable countries, the SIDS, some of the African countries, to get prior access, preferred eligibility to the new fund, not excluding that there might be situations. Look at the situation in Pakistan, where the disaster was so big that everybody said, also we, of course, we have to help them. So it's not, we are not as strict, but there needs to be a focus. And then we have a preference for the World Bank as a host, but we are not strict, we are not missionaries on that, we are pragmatic, as I said earlier.
If I can quickly ask you to take that on as well, as we pass the baton from G20 to COP28, how do you think we can take this forward?
So, I think, climate change is the biggest crisis before us. The Earth may survive, we'll all go extinct. Therefore, there has to be a huge sense of urgency. And that huge sense of urgency must come in from G7 countries. And in terms of pushing for greater reforms of financing, there must be a technological leapfrogging, because if you're talking about tripling of renewable energy, it requires resources. If you're talking about moving into hard-to-abate sectors, it requires a huge amount of technological disruption. Without that, it will not happen. And therefore, technological disruption will have to play a very critical role to my mind. And I think more than anything else, and I entirely agree that if you're talking about 1.5 degrees centigrade at 2050, it will not happen. It will not happen without the developed countries taking leadership and saying that we are going to deliver it by 2040, including China.
With this kind of leadership, with the kind of decisions they are taking, with the kind of, and look at civil aviation. I was civil aviation minister. Today you are crossing 5 lakh passengers in a day in civil aviation. And everybody's civil aviation is collapsing. Your airlines are ordering 1,000 planes plus. Why? Because you were able to privatize Air India in time.
And what about so by the way, that alert even I got, but I thought it's got to everyone. So and that alert,
you also got it, huh?
But I thought it's not.
But you are one of our friends. Why would we, as a government, want to target you?
You tell me, sir.
मेरे MP को कह रहे हैं. Now I don't look at the phone. I may have got a signal like that. I don't know. These guys are nuts, pure nuts. कोई मौका मिलता है तो फिर किसने बोले सोरोस का क्या? अरे सोरोस ने किया, जिसने भी किया है. Why do you have this feeling of victim?
वो छोड़ो से बातें नहीं है अलर्ट्स का. Let's come back to green transitions. On this issue,
I couldn't resist getting that one in.
So on the issue of transition itself, so the public sector, private sector, government ecosystem are all aligned for the objectives that we have set ourselves. Now let's look at the broader energy transitions, the 2070 net zero, the 2047 developed country status. When we move to that framework, how do you see India progressing? How do you assess our performance over the last 5 to 7 years since the Paris Agreement, let's say in 2015? How are we doing on that, on the larger net zero objective?
First of all, I had the privilege of spending 39 years in the foreign service before and I had 39 years in the foreign service, 6 years doing what you do, think tanking at the international level. And now I've been a minister for 6 years and 3 months. We have to be very careful about definitions. The Prime Minister, in all his assessments, is a very cautious person. when he says that India will be net zero by 2070, he set a target which is both a target towards which you work, and there's no question of our being short. When he says 2047 to Viksit Desh Banna hai, I am going to make two submissions to you on the 2070 net zero target and this 2047. Let me start with 2047. I know from the time I was in the UN and I know now that the only agreed definition of what is a...
To those who did not get the Hindi part of it, the Prime Minister has laid a challenge for India to be a developed nation by 2047. That's the target.
That's the target. Now, is there a definition of what is a developed country? I'm not aware of it, but you go by broad indices that your this sector, that sector, etc. will be, But there is a definition for what is called a least developed countries, and we looked it up. There are 46 out of them, out of 193 member states of the UN. What will be our economy by 2040, according to the Singh? According to Ernst & Young, by 2040 you should be a $26 trillion economy. Now tell me, with a $5 trillion economy by 2025, you're already feeling good. If that $5 trillion economy gets multiplied 5 times, your per capita income also goes up. I don't know what the definition is, but my submission to you, sir, is that we are going to be a developed country by current levels of, what is a developed country much before that. So I'm saying. I mean, you've got countries with a GDP of 2.7%, 2.7 trillion, calling themselves very good restaurants and all that. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at the GDP and the heft, you'll be way ahead of that. Now let me come to that 2070 net zero. Since we are talking about the OMCs and the oil sector, I'll give you some statistics. What are the targets for our OMCs to become net zero? Engineers India Limited 2035. 35 years before 2070. ONGC 2038. They're one of the largest companies in the world. 2038. GAIL 2040. BPCL 2040. HPCL 2040. Oil India Limited 2040. IOCL, 7th largest company in that segment, 2046. 2070. Say much before that, the ones which are dealing with fossil fuels and all the other toxicity that goes into it, they'll be net zero. This is my current information. I also throw, just to provoke you, as you grow, as your GDP grows,
You become more sophisticated.
absolutely. You see, because then you are able to do things in a more sustainable manner. The problem comes at the bottom of the growth, because then your devastation is more. You're using kerosene, you're using wet wood, coal, etc.
So you become a more efficient user of resources.
Absolutely.
Sir, we have only a couple of minutes left, but I thought I will again take you to your own field in a new avatar. Energy politics. We have Europe, which has a conflict. We have Middle East, which is looking precarious. We have a Chinese demand that is not rising. We have OPEC and OPEC plus politics underway. How do you see this chessboard, and how is it likely for us to come out of it in a way that sustains our economic growth into the future?
It's very difficult to separate yourself, talking about myself, from the current assignment that you've been. Very difficult. If I were a free person and not having to deal with the current
Responsibility to chair.
the energy and the petroleum and natural gas and the housing and urban affairs challenge, I would be more worried. But now that I deal with it for petroleum and natural gas, I tell you, you have just now the current global consumption prior to the fragility which came in on account of the excess liquidity, inflation, and the interest rates going up. It was about 102 million barrels a day. To members of OPEC or OPEC Plus took 5 million barrels off the market, which is two major members. So today,
Saudi Arabia and Russia removed.
yeah, you named them. I didn't because I have. Yeah, okay, fine. 97 million barrels a day is what is being produced and what is being refined and consumed. Samir, my view is there's no shortage of energy in the world, no shortage of oil. Take with that the realization that tomorrow being defined not in terms of specific timelines, fossil fuels have to go out of the market. So I would have thought that these countries should be in a mood to keep the prices in such a way that if you take the price too high, you will have a repeat of what happened in 2006. Okay? I even quoted Karl Marx on that. You don't want to take it so high that the demand collapses because it goes into recession. And you also don't want to keep the prices so low that you don't get a return on the oil to underwrite or to meet your whatever your planned expenditures are. So I would have thought it's pretty easy that you can sit down with the consumers, have a reasonable dialogue and say, I need so much price, I know you can't go beyond it, and the price should hover around it. Now what happened is two things. One is the reduction in 5 million barrels, maybe they thought price would go up. But there are other problems in the global economies. As I said, half the world is in recession, the other half is flirting with recession. If you continue to have geopolitical uncertainty, which is what you have now, for a variety of reasons, there are conflicts in certain parts of the world which are very directly and intimately related to the energy supply routes. So you have to be very cautious. My own view is that it is in everyone's interest, and that's my message, that you allow healthy recovery of the global economy to take place. Because of the excess liquidity which came into the market on account of the stimulus packages which were introduced, and the fact that they've been constantly raising their rates, which is resulting in other problems in those parts of the world. I mean, mortgages are becoming almost impossible at that. So what do? It should be in everyone's interest. Today prices, in spite of the turbulence, they're about, I think, 86 or something like that. I personally think it's too high. But somebody asked me a question, kitne hone chahiye? And I turn around and say, that's not my job. I have never been to an oil producer and say, listen, please reduce the price. No, we are not made like that. You have oil, that's your sovereign right to decide how much you want to make available. But then they say, we don't deal with price. Of course you deal with price. If you limit the amount of oil that is available, the price will go up. But now there's another catch. If you take decisions which are not thought through, then you are facing what is called the law of unintended consequences. You set out to do something and you ended up doing something else. Insofar as, and I am going to make this provocative statement, when military conflict took place in February 2022, some countries decided to weaponize their ideological thing. I don't think they thought it through. Because what is the idea? Idea is today that you need to be able to restore stability, bring stability around. And you need to be able to do it in a manner which leaves it open for global economic recovery. Today what I'm worried about is, and if some Venezuelan oil comes into the market, already the press is saying, oh, now we're going to import cheap Venezuelan oil. Listen, bottom line, we will buy from wherever we can get cheapest. And Venezuelan oil, by the way, can be used in our refineries now. Overall, I think the world hopefully has enough sensible people in leadership positions who will heed our Prime Minister's advice.
Not a time for war.
Absolutely. But again, if you have a terror attack like that, and I'm not going to say it because a terrorist takes away the most fundamental right of all, the right to life. So if you go and do that, obviously there's going to be a reaction. So then you can't get into political theory where kisi ka hai, wo kisi ka nahi. So today we are facing many difficulties, but I'm confident that You were able to play unifier in a deeply divided world through the G20, and I hope that spirit prevails. But you have to be cautious in the coming months. Be able to navigate in the journey ahead as we have been able to navigate in the past.
Is India looking forward, looking towards Latin America for the fuel supply?
No, we have already buying from 39 countries. So if let's say more energy comes on source in one particular part of the world, obviously India today we are the third largest consumer in the world, and obviously a country which is consuming 5 million barrels of crude oil in a day will obviously look at where, and Venezuela is a country where we had actually some payment stuck when the American sanctions came on. So I have, like you, looked at the global situation. Our ambassador designate to Caracas, who's going, he was with me today and he'll be joining shortly. And one of the things I told him is to, look around, see what's happening. By the way, Venezuela has the largest reserves in the world. So if Venezuela, I don't know what the terms of it are, whether for 6 months or whatever it is, if Venezuela comes on the market, it should have a sobering effect on all the others who were trying to see. And our refineries have been using Venezuelan oil. I think we're at Paradeep, right?
Yes, sir. Paradeep and Reliance.
Yeah.
सर आपने बायोफ्यूल और जो ब्लेंडिंग है और बाकी एथनॉल को लेकर आपने बहुत सारी बातें की, किस तरीके से हम ब्लेंडिंग को बढ़ा रहे हैं, क्या टारगेट?
तो मैंने आपको देखिए बढ़ाने की बात जहां तक है जी, मैं आपको सिर्फ आपके साथ यही शेयर कर रहा था, हमने टोटल फ्रीडम दी हुई है। आप इस समय बायोफ्यूल्स या कंप्रेस बायोगैस की हमारे तरफ से टोटल इंकरेजमेंट है। हमने टारगेट इसलिए रखा था क्योंकि टारगेट सरकार की तरफ से मैंडेट और टारगेट बहुत जरूरी होते हैं, क्योंकि वो नहीं होंगे तो जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं स्टेक होल्डर सिस्टम में, दे मे नॉट इवन टेक इट सीरियसली। अभी हमने टारगेट रखा था 10% ब्लेंडिंग का नवंबर 2022 तक, वो हमने 5 महीने पहले पूरा किया। फिर जो 2030 का टारगेट था 20% ब्लेंडिंग का, वो हम उसको 5 साल और आगे ले आए हैं। अभी हमारी 12% टारगेट था एंड ऑफ अक्टूबर, वी हैव मेट दैट। और मुझे पूरी उम्मीद है कि आने वाले समय में 2025 के एंड तक वो हमारा जो 20% ब्लेंडिंग टारगेट है वो हो जाएगा। उसके आगे मैंने जो बात की है, दैट वाज मोर loud thinking from my side. I said that 20% target was set essentially because we were not that sure how whether the amount of ethanol that was required for 20% blending, whether that would be available. और मैंने ये भी कहा कि 1000 करोड़ लीटर हमें 20% ब्लेंडिंग के लिए चाहिए, जिसमें हमारी 12% जो ब्लेंडिंग हो रही है उससे 600 करोड़ लीटर ऑलरेडी मिल रहा है। और जो आने वाले समय है जिसमें राइस से, शुगर से, अब हमने मक्का भी ऐड कर दिया, मक्का में द ग्रोथ हैज बीन 15 गुना समथिंग लाइक दैट। ओके, सो वी आर वेरी कॉन्फिडेंट। और अभी एक इंडस्ट्रियल वन ऑफ द वेरी कैप्टन्स इन दैट एरिया हैज कम टू मी, आई सेड लिसन, I gave him some suggestions. He said, yes, you're absolutely right. तो फीड की कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं होगी। बाकी अगर आप प्रोड्यूस करेंगे, शुरू में हमारे पास लोग आते थे और कहते थे कि आप हमारी बैंक से बात करा दीजिए, हमारी ऑयल कंपनी से बात करवा दीजिए कि हमें बाय बैक गारंटी मिल जाए। अब कोई उसके बारे में चिंता ही नहीं करता। उनको ये पक्का है कि सरकार की नीति है, लोग बना रहे हैं और ये कंजम्पशन यहाँ पे भी यूज होगी। और बाय द वे बायोफ्यूल्स अलायंस भी बन गई है, एंड यू आर ओनली 3% ऑफ दैट, यू अंडरस्टैंड। सो इस समय बायोफ्यूल्स अलायंस में जो हमारे फिगर्स हैं, हमारी $92 बिलियन की बायोफ्यूल्स मार्केट है, 1-2 साल में 190 बिलियन जाने वाली है। और मैं अपने फिगर्स में तो यही यूज कर रहा हूँ कि $500 बिलियन से ज्यादा की मार्केट है।
सर एक बहुत अहम बात है कि बहुत लंबे समय से भारत सरकार पेट्रोल डीजल के प्राइस को कंट्रोल करने,
अरे किए ही नहीं है प्राइस हमने बढ़ने नहीं दिया पिछले 530 दिन में। क्या यार, अप्रैल 2021 ना 22 April 6th April 2022 exactly, that's the period. Or the other thing is that in that period, reference period which we use, दुनिया भर में दाम बढ़ रहे थे, हमारा पेट्रोल का दाम 5% नीचे आया, and by and large we are maintaining that. So on all fronts, availability, affordability and sustainability, we are doing well. बाकी आगे चल के वन कैनॉट से, आप पूछ रही थी अभी कि जियोपॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन क्या है और क्या होगा। मान लीजिए कल अगर स्थिति बदल जाती है, आई एम नॉट श्योर दैट वी विल बी इन अ पोजीशन टू डू दैट, बट वी आर सो फार बीन एबल टू नेविगेट एंड वी विल बी एबल टू नेविगेट। थैंक यू वेरी मच।